How did you evolve to where you are today and in the business with mom and helping others?
Yeah, for me, I think it's very clear that what happens, sort of what Susan was saying earlier about if I'm a therapist or a teacher or a facilitator, if I go in and I'm just that label, I just kind of compartmentalize and I keep myself separate, then something is cut off. Something's cut off in me, and something is cut off in the people that I'm working with, and uh, parenting is very similar, where the parents, whatever happens for the parents that is good, whatever comes together in their life, whatever they really sort out, gets passed on to the children, and whatever they don't also gets passed on to the children. So for me, I feel like I'm the beneficiary of Susan doing a lot of work, a lot of interest in going inside and figuring out like what works and what doesn't, and a willingness to pay the cost of the evolution involved in that, and in the kind of taking apart how things had been put together for her. And so I grew up in an environment that, though wasn't perfect, had a lot of the things that Susan didn't have when she was growing up. So there was a lot of room for me to express myself, to explore different ways of being, ways of expressing emotion, and the expression of emotion was very practiced and invited in my home environment, and I really knew that I was being seen, and that I was being loved, and that my job was really to find my way, and there wasn't a lot of kind of external requirements or expectations of how that needed to be. So that was a real gift for me, and in a way, that space it was in my system. It was just in my fabric because I grew up with it. And I went to a public school, in elementary school and high school, and really did get swept up, regardless of the fact that I grew up in this quite unique environment. I still got swept up in some of the difficulty, some of the self-identification, the ego identification that's so predominant in our society, and then that's my work. My work is to reconcile that, this clarity and this openness that I know is good in me, and then this other way that seems so predominant in our world, where people are pretending and actually being dishonest with themselves and others, and closing off their heart, and not expressing themselves openly. So I spent most of my teenage years really trying to do that well. Like this idea that if I learn how to say it right, and I put this whole dolphin person together, then I'll have like a social group that's really solid that I can count on. I'll have this self-esteem that just will never go away. I'll have a life that is good enough so that I can feel satisfied. And at a point, sometime near the end of my adolescence, it became clear that that was never going to work. That no matter how perfectly I arranged things in my life, that this deeper sense of being alive and being satisfied in my life wasn't going to come from that. And spurred by some fortuitous and painful experiences in my life, I was pressed against the reality that if we don't choose it, if we don't choose to open, if we don't choose to really look inside and cultivate that kind of transparency and authenticity, it won't happen. And no matter what we do on the outside, it just won't happen. And so that was the beginning for me. I would say I was probably 19 or 20, and I started to read spiritual books. I started to really investigate and explore what is it to be a human being, and what is it to express myself with authenticity, and how do I navigate. Yeah, anyone can be a great person when the sun is shining and the roses are blooming, and how do we do it when it really feels crappy, and we want anything but what we have. How do we do it then? And so I was fortunate enough through my 20s to work mostly with youth, and it was a lot of stuff around violence prevention, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, how to develop assertiveness skills and conflict resolution skills. And all the while, this underlying fabric that was in me from my childhood was wanting to kind of go deeper. because it's one thing to teach people skills, and it's another thing to awaken in people what they're here for. And in my mom's work, I knew that that was true. I knew that that's really what it was about. And so about 3 years ago, when I moved to Edmonton, we had been living in separate cities for about 12 years. While I did all of this facilitation work on my own, we sat down and we had a conversation about what would it be like to create something together. And so immediately after that conversation, it just found its way. It became an excitement in us. It became a clear, it was just a goodness that we knew was right to express, and that our job became, how do we support that? How do we invest our time, our energy, our hearts in forwarding what we knew was good and what we could create together?